Imagine a world where love was never the reason for marriage, where vows meant little more than contracts, and where desire roamed free in shadows and palaces alike. Ancient Rome was not a place where hearts were joined in sacred unity, but where alliances were brokered like business deals. Behind the golden marble columns and endless parades of triumph, the private lives of Rome's elite were filled with secrets, indulgences, and desires that clashed violently with the image of order and strength they projected to the world. It was a world where power was measured not only in armies and wealth, but in the control a man could claim over another's body. And within that shadowy web of dominance and submission, a hidden figure emerged, the male concubine, whose tragic life reveals the darkest corners of Rome's obsession with authority, reputation, and lust. To the Romans, infidelity was not scandalous, it was expected. Husbands, senators, and even emperors were free to take their pleasures where they wished. Women known as courtesans filled banquet halls, slaves were commanded into silence, and lovers were taken openly with little shame. But beneath this openness lurked a cruel paradox. Rome cared less about who shared your bed and more about who held control. In the eyes of society, the man who dominated was celebrated, while the one who submitted, the one who yielded, was stripped of dignity. For women, submission was expected. For men, it was a stain. A Roman male concubine existed within this tension, desirable, adorned, even cherished at times, yet always carrying the shadow of shame that could never be erased. The empire itself was steeped in contradiction. An emperor could be worshipped as a god on earth, yet behind closed doors, whispers of what he did in the dark could unravel his image of unshakable command. Julius Caesar, the conqueror of Gaul and destroyer of republics, was rumored to have played the submissive role in his affairs with men. For his enemies, this was the perfect weapon, an accusation meant not simply to mock, but to undermine his authority as a man who ruled through dominance. In Rome, such rumors could topple legacies, no matter how vast the victories on the battlefield. And then there was Emperor Hadrian, remembered less for conquest and more for the devotion he poured into one man, Antinous, a youth of remarkable beauty and intelligence. Their bond was not hidden. Antinous traveled with Hadrian across the empire, his presence a constant reminder of the emperor's obsession. But what began as passion ended in haunting tragedy when Antinous mysteriously drowned in the Nile. The grief that followed drove Hadrian to acts of near madness. He raised monuments, founded a city in the boy's name, and went so far as to declare him a god. Coins bore his face, temples rose in his honor, and the cult of Antinous spread like wildfire. Yet beneath the splendor was a chilling truth. Hadrian had turned his grief into a form of worship, binding immortal youth to eternity, whether Antinous had wanted it or not. Still, for all of Hadrian's mourning, not every emperor cloaked his desires in tragedy. Nero, the firebrand of Rome, turned scandal into spectacle. He did not simply take lovers, he staged weddings. He, the emperor, once donned the veil and played the role of a bride to his beloved Pythagoras, shocking a society that demanded he remain the image of masculine authority. Later, he wed a young boy named Sporus, reversing the roles to appease public outrage. Yet even this twisted theater masked a darker truth. Nero's obsession with appearances drove him to unthinkable cruelty, ensuring Sporus was reshaped, both in body and identity, to suit the emperor's hunger for control. It is here, within these tales, that we glimpse the heart of Rome's shadowed intimacy. For the male concubine, life was never his own. He existed at the mercy of powerful men, adored one moment, discarded the next, and always vulnerable to the whims of a master whose desires shaped his fate. His existence was at once glamorous and perilous, a symbol of Rome's hunger for pleasure and its ruthless hunger for dominance. And yet, as unsettling as Nero and Hadrian's tales may seem, there were rulers who ventured even further into darkness, men whose appetites blurred the line between indulgence and cruelty. As the empire aged, whispers of unimaginable acts began to echo from secluded villas and hidden chambers, painting a picture not of passion, but of torment. Before we continue into these shadows, take a moment to reflect on what history reveals when we dare to look beyond the marble statues and gilded thrones. These stories are not just curiosities of a lost world, they are windows into the eternal hunger for control that lurks in human nature. If you've felt the weight of these tales so far, I invite you to subscribe, because what comes next will only pull us deeper into Rome's darkest secrets, where power was not only corrupting, but utterly consuming. And so, as we leave Nero's cruel theater behind, we descend further into the empire's most chilling corridors. For beyond the public spectacles, behind walls guarded by silence, emperors indulged desires so disturbing that even Rome, a city accustomed to excess, recoiled in fear. At the center of this abyss stands one ruler, remembered not for glory, but for corruption so profound it left a scar across history. His name was Tiberius, and the stories whispered of his hidden life would turn the grandeur of the empire into something far more sinister. Tiberius was not the emperor Rome had dreamed of. He inherited an empire overflowing with wealth, power, and prestige. Yet his reign drifted into shadow. Withdrawn and suspicious, he abandoned the heart of Rome and exiled himself to the island of Capri, a paradise of cliffs and blue waters that soon became a prison of nightmares. Here, away from the Senate's watchful eyes and the people's gaze, he indulged in desires that history would remember with a shudder. For the young men who were brought into his villas, Capri was no paradise. It was a gilded cage where innocence met the crushing weight of imperial appetite. Ancient historians describe the island in tones of horror, painting scenes of decadence that blurred into depravity. Boys were summoned under the guise of servitude, but whispers claimed their true purpose was far darker. Whether these accounts are exaggerated or not, the stain upon Tiberius's legacy is undeniable. To later generations, he was less a ruler than a predator cloaked in purple robes, his name forever entwined with the abuse of absolute power. For the male concubine in Rome, this was the ultimate danger, that the role of lover could collapse into that of captive, that affection could be replaced with fear, and that intimacy could be twisted into cruelty. Unlike Hadrian's reverence or Nero's grotesque performances, Tiberius's shadow loomed as a warning of what happens when unchecked power devours every boundary. His story illustrates that the empire's pursuit of dominance was not confined to the battlefield. It seeped into bedrooms, villas, and hearts, leaving behind scars history cannot erase. And yet, perhaps the most haunting element is how Rome itself allowed this to happen. Society looked away, distracted by games, bread, and spectacle, while emperors turned private lives into stages of control. In a city where dominance defined manhood, even cruelty could be excused if it preserved the illusion of power. The male concubine's tragedy was not just his own, it was the tragedy of a world that valued control above compassion, reputation above humanity. As centuries passed, Rome's golden image endured. Tourists now walk the ruins, marvel at statues, and imagine the glory of the Caesars. Yet few pause to consider the hidden lives that unfolded behind those marble walls. For every emperor worshipped as a god, there were countless others trapped in silence, their stories lost in the shadows. The concubine's life was one of contradiction, at once cherished and despised, desired and degraded, lifted to prominence, yet denied dignity. His tragedy was not recorded in triumphal arches or marble reliefs, but in the whispers of history, in the silences that still linger over Rome's ruins. Perhaps that is what makes these stories so unsettling. They remind us that power does not only shape nations, it shapes lives in ways too often forgotten. The emperors of Rome are remembered for conquests, laws, and monuments, but their true legacies are also written in the private tragedies